There she is. Hello, Roger.
Hi there.
It is good to see you this morning. I haven't seen you in a few days, and you are looking chipper.
Well, thank you, sir.
You know, I talked to you briefly not long ago, and you were not as chipper. And I asked you, to explain everything to me, and you were not quick to do that because it's all so complicated.
Right.
And I'm one of your simple friends.
Well, I guess you could say I have my chip together then, huh?
Yes, you do. Man, I'm glad we're back. We have some things. I've got a picture we're going to show folks a little bit later here in a few minutes on the show that is one intense photograph. And it's of Roger. And but you were a little bit younger than you are now.
I was quite a bit younger, yes.
And I think the star of the show in that picture is your mom. Roger's mom is in the picture too. It's a neat picture. It's coming up. That's called a tease, Roger.
Oh.
We're teasing with that picture.
Oh, I thought you were trying to get me to stay online.
Yeah, we're trying to get a listener to stay more than 5 or 10 minutes. It's what we're doing. But hey, man, you have your notes ready because we're going to be talking about some stuff in your early years and some things that you went through on this. You got your notes, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, see, one reason we're doing this is because we got requests from listeners and viewers who wanted to know more about my background.
We talked about that right before we went on this show, and I'm going to repeat something quickly we said because it sets up what you just mentioned. There are people that go, well, now wait a minute, this guy. Some people apparently knew him years ago as a public speaker and as an entertainer, but how did he get like he was? Because one thing I told you, I said, Roger, the thing about you is, considering all circumstances, you are successful. Now, success can be identified as a lot of different things, and I know you're not really comfortable with that because you know the whole story. But Roger, for a person who is dealing with the things that you are dealing with, to be able to talk is one thing, but the fact that you can talk and you can talk to a single person one-on-one, or you can talk to groups of individuals, and you really have something to say. I think that is a form of success that you have excelled at that most people in your condition are not able to do. Hello, I'm Michael Shawn, and welcome to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. Roger Dykes is a teacher and counselor with a master's degree in family counseling from Texas Tech University. He is the owner of UV Blake Records and has written a book titled Non-Persons Rolling in a Normal World. And there's a few more things. Roger was born with cerebral palsy. Now a quadriplegic, he has been confined most of his life to a wheelchair. And for a while, even enjoying a career as a stand-up or sit-down comedian and after-dinner speaker. Disabled? Yes, but you forget about that pretty quickly because Roger thrives. So here is Roger Dykes.
Well, it's good to be back, Michael. I'm glad we could be together again for another show.
We're totally on YouTube now.
Yeah, YouTube, I know that.
Is the big platform, and we have stepped up. But as to what we call them viewers.
Well, I know we call
view
them
us on YouTube.
What do we call this process? So, are we on a show?
I know. I got it. We could call them subscribers.
Oh, hey, that's a good idea. Hey, you
right.
mean if they subscribe, they get more of this, right?
If you
get reminded.
No, we don't give them any more, but all they do is they get a little heads up that a new Roger Dykes Just Saying has just been uploaded onto the Roger Dykes channel. And so they can go there. And for those of you who aren't, are just not that computer literate and don't know how everything works, just type in your search engine on YouTube. And when you do that, just type Roger Dykes, ROGERDYKES. And the Roger Dykes channel will come up and you can listen to the latest one then. But we need subscribers on this program because 18PR has told us that we need subscribers and we do whatever they say.
Absolutely. I do anything they say all the time.
All right.
That's because I don't want to be fired.
Oh, and the big thing is, of course, it costs nothing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man.
Now that you said that, you know what I may do?
What?
I didn't even subscribe to this. I thought there was a cost involved.
Oh,
but you're telling me it's free.
You know what we need to do? And we need to do it right now. We got people in suspenders wanting to see that picture. And what we're going to do is go ahead and put that picture
wait,
up.
Let's
wait a minute. Hold it. Why?
No, let's don't put the picture up just yet.
A minute ago, I was producing this show. Now what?
I know, not. Okay. We need to give a little background first, and then we'll put the picture up. Okay?
Oh, background. That's what you're here
background,
for.
Background. Okay. Yes. All right. Now, the reason we need background is this: we're talking the year we're talking about prior to the picture. Okay?
Yeah.
It's 1951.
Oh my!
Now that's a long time ago. That's 70 years, give or take.
Yeah.
All right. That's when I managed to come into the world.
Okay.
And unfortunately, in coming into the world, things didn't work quite the way they were supposed to.
All right.
And as a result, I suffered brain damage. And it's evident even today that I'm goofy as all get out, and that's probably the reason. But I suffered brain damage, which was unheard of in this part of the country. They didn't know what to call it. They didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
They knew I wasn't right. They knew things weren't correct. But technology, medicine. In 1951, Lubbock, Texas, was not the medical mecca that it is now.
They didn't know a lot about cerebral palsy.
Right. Yeah. And, well, they didn't even know for sure what was wrong.
Yeah.
But originally, and you can see this, and we don't have any of these pictures because I don't want to bore you with all my family album. But if you look at the early pictures, when I'm a newborn baby kind of person, you will notice that my mother or dad, whoever's holding me, has got their hand behind my neck, and the reason for that is I could not hold my head up.
Yeah,
it just flopped over.
Yeah.
Now there was an advantage to this because they could squeeze the back of my neck and we look like a Charlie McCarthy doll. And they'd talk and I would answer.
Who is somebody that everybody knew in 1951.
There you go. So anyway, the point is that that's when Roger was a baby person.
Yeah.
It took a couple of years for people to figure out what was wrong and what we needed to do.
Yeah.
So around 1953, and 54, which is when I'm about 2 to 3 years old, we ended up going to the Lubbock Cerebral Palsy Treatment Center. This organization does not exist anymore. It's been replaced and all that. But this is what was here then. We lived on a farm 40 miles from Lubbock. So my mother drove me, together, we came to the treatment center 3 times a week, 40 miles each way.
Yeah.
For the treatments that they offered. And as a result, they've determined that what I had was cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
So they began to treat that with exercise, with all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. We won't go into all that issue, but one of the quick stories my mother told me.
Roger, you don't know any quick stories.
I
was just pointing that out.
Well, I know a couple of quick stories, but anyway, supposedly, well, I don't say supposedly, I know what happened. When they were doing the evaluation, of course, it was obvious I couldn't walk and I couldn't do these other things, couldn't sit up well, and things like that.
Yeah.
So as they were going through the process, one of the things they offered at the treatment center was speech therapy.
Yeah.
And so my mother, being somewhat naive and a young mother, not knowing all the ins and outs of everything, she asked the director, Dr. Snell, she said, Dr. Snell, do we need to think about speech therapy for Roger? To which the speech therapist said, Ms. Dykes, we haven't developed a way to shut them up. For you see, I was already talking far better.
I rest my case.
I was talking far better than anybody my age would even be talking.
Yeah, and so that made you so different from all cerebral palsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's one of the things that I didn't get damaged that really should have been damaged, considering the amount of damage that was done to my brain.
Yeah.
And the part of my brain that was damaged. One of the problems or one of the issues you deal with was people suffering from cerebral palsy is that depending on what part of the brain gets damaged, that affects the rest of their body. So everybody doesn't have the same damage done. However, it may be a car wreck. It may be falling into a swimming pool off the diving board. Brain damage comes in a lot of different ways. Mine came at birth, but point being that all cerebral palsy people don't have the same problems based on where their brain is damaged. My brain was damaged, so they told my mother and dad, in such a way that the one thing I should not be able to do was talk. Yeah. So one has to ask the question, how is that possible? And it has to be a God-given thing to allow me to have the ability to talk in spite of the fact of the brain damage that was done.
It is a special blessing.
Well,
it is. Yeah.
So while I'm there at the treatment center one time, they lose me and they don't know where I'm at. And so they go walking down the hall, and it turns out that I'm in the speech therapy room. And of course, obviously, they just said, I don't need that. So what is Roger doing in there? Well, back in the day, some of you may remember, you have to be quite old to remember this, but there were records. Okay, that's something that we don't see anymore, but there actually were records. Okay, there were Bozo the Clown records. Okay, and there was a whole series of them put out. And the way it worked was Bozo the Clown went through a story, and there was a storybook that went along with it. And every time you heard the rooster crow or the horn honk or whatever the signal was, you were supposed to turn the page. Well, there was a kid listening to the Bozo the Clown record, and the point was his hearing was bad. And so they were training him to react. So to turn the page when the record told him to beep or crow or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, of course, he wasn't doing that very well because he couldn't hear it as well, didn't know what to do. So Roger because I want to hear the story. I'm standing there by him, telling him when to turn the page, which kills the whole point.
You found a job.
Yeah, but see, that would kill the whole point of the therapy. So they didn't really. So see, I didn't do anything right in that department because I was trying. All I want to do is just get the kid to get on with. I wasn't getting to see the picture.
It is best not to lose Roger.
I wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place. The treatment center set me up and began the process of having me learn to walk. And I didn't have the ability to walk at all. And so they suggested we get braces, and they suggested we get crutches, and they suggested we practice and practice and practice.
Yeah.
None of the practice did I enjoy. Okay. This was not delightfully fun for me. But my mother and dad were convinced it needed to be done, and they were going to make every effort to make sure
Roger,
that I had the opportunity.
You can continue talking, but with your permission, we're going to do the cutaway, and we're going to bring that picture up now.
Now, that's fine.
And Roger, I think the thing about this picture that is the first thing that struck me when I looked at it, the intensity on your face, it was like, whoa. I mean, for someone that age to come up with that look. But you said something interesting when I mentioned that to you. You said maybe it is less intense and more about, the word you said was?
Fear.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what you must understand several things here as you look at this picture. My mother that is my mother standing behind me. We are in the farmhouse that I grew up in. My mother, I cannot keep my hands on the crutches. Okay, my hands will not hold the crutches.
You can't.
So, right, I can't.
To this day, you
it would be difficult.
Can't really use your hands for much of anything.
Right. My mother is holding my hands on the crutches and using her foot to push my foot through to walk. So when you see this picture, she's bent over and holding all this together so that now also to add to the complications of the situation. We didn't understand this at the time totally, but we'll discuss this in future videos. But what was taken away from me in brain damage was the ability to have natural balance. I do not, and I don't have it today.
Yeah,
my mother.
You still now don't have balance.
And you can't.
Which means you can fall out of your chair when you're reaching for something or something. You just tumble.
Yes, it is not natural. Now, the point of this is that when I'm standing with crutches and braces, we may have some other pictures later on in other videos, but when I'm standing there, I am scared to death because I don't want to fall. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the balance to catch myself. If and when I did fall, and I did, with the crutches, now not with Mom standing there behind me, this is later on, we'll get to this. But with Mom standing behind me, I am still afraid of falling. So what you see on my face is intensity to a degree, but it's also probably, I don't really remember it, but I'm probably sheer terror in my head because I'm so scared of falling.
Oh boy.
Okay, now what you got to appreciate is my mother, now she wasn't doing this with me all this time, but we had exercise, we had walking, we had occupational therapy, where they teach you to use your hands and do things with your hands. And my mother is the trainer. She is the therapist. She's whatever. And so at this point in time, when I'm 3 years old, which is the age I am in the picture, when I'm 3 years old, my mother is working with me physically about 8 hours a day. So this was a taxing experience.
It's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job. And remember now, I don't get a break either. If she's working with me for 8 hours, I'm doing something for 8 hours a day, physical therapy wise.
Wow.
At age 3.
Well, and that continued throughout the whole time you were growing up with your mom and dad.
That will continue until I'm 16 years old. That will continue for the next 13 years.
Yeah.
In various forms. Now, I am amazed as I look back on it, the dedication that my parents had.
Oh my, yes.
For me to do this, because my dad's a farmer. Okay, I mean we're on a farm, so he's farming. Now, he couldn't be in the house helping mom do this, okay, because he had to make the living. But would you like to know what Dad did do to help Mom out? He hired a couple, the man to work with him, which he didn't really need, but the woman was brought in to be the housekeeper. She did all the housekeeping to make it so my mother had the time, the 8 hours a day to spend working on with
and
me.
She could pay attention to you, and still things would get done.
And you couldn't see, you can't leave me, you can't stand me up out there and say, I'll be right back. Because when you come back, I'll be on the floor. So it was intense to the degree that she had to be with me the whole time doing something. And we did all kinds of things. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of things while we were doing all this. But
Roger, we're going to, you can't see that on your monitor in here, but we're back to you and I live now on screen. And I wanted you to know that I was just so struck when you shared that picture with me about the intensity of it all, but yet it's several layers deep beyond that. And it is such a good representation of a young Roger Dykes who faced what had happened to him at birth immediately in his life. And that's what your life was about, struggling to be better.
Right. And I credit the people around me. I had great parents. I had great grandparents. I had great grandparents, but I also had my grandparents were great. And they were involved in all of this. They were helping out financially on a lot of the things because all this costs money, and all the therapy, all the braces. By the way, there was no one at this time when I'm 3 years old, there's no one in Lubbock who can make braces. So we had to go to Dallas to get braces.
Oh my!
Everything about this cost money.
There was no internet or anything.
There's no government. There's no government help. We didn't have the government help that's out there today that will fund these things. So you can go get funding, money from government grants, things like that for this stuff. There was none.
Roger, I'm going to just bust in here for a second because we are actually running short on time already. But the thing that I wanted to say is I wanted to remind people, particularly if you listen to this for the first time, and I'll do this very quickly, but if you were tasked at living on the exact same grocery, gasoline, every type of budget that the average person has that was set up for you 40 years ago, and you needed to live on that now, plus you add to the fact that caregivers are something you cannot do without. You can't do without 24 hours. If you get in bed, you get out of bed, you go to the bathroom, you eat anything or drink anything, it is necessary for a caregiver to give that to you so that you can have that. But beyond that, it's not just as simple as that. Roger, what I think people forget, and you have to almost hang around you for a little while to begin to really grasp and wrap your mind around, is that if something happened and a particular caregiver you needed desperately to let them go. We're just saying what if here. Because of the budget that was set up some 40 years ago or more, you can't just hire another one.
No,
at least not unless there's someone willing to work for this penance and maybe be like a volunteer or something like that. But that's not what the program you're on. So people can say, well, Roger, why don't you're smart. You got a master's degree in family counseling. You do all this work. Why don't you create an income to make up the difference? And the fact is, if you do, according to the government regulations on the program that you're on, if you do, they will kick you off of the program and you'll be dead in less than a week. Now,
yes.
So the other answer is, you just, let's just put him in a home. There are people who listen to this don't really care that much about you, Roger. They just happened onto this and they're listening to it. So let's just put him in a home. Don't you people realize that in his own home, where he's at, where he wants to be, where he can affect the lives of people around him positively and do the work that he does, don't you people realize that it would be 5, 6, 7, 8 times, 10 times more expensive to put him in a 24-hour-a-day care facility, because that's what they charge, because they know what stuff costs now, that where Roger is at now, where Roger is living now, where Roger is happy and fulfilled, and where he is living a life that benefits other people now is the least expensive way for him to live. So, and Roger, you don't like to say this, but I'll say it, and then you can chew me out later. But what we're deciding here is whether Roger lives or dies, because it's becoming almost impossible to make everything work within the construct and within the boundaries of what his program says he's got to do. And all we're asking is that maybe, because the truth is, Roger knows more about all the things that he's dealing with in his situation than anybody who is sitting in Austin, who sits back and decides, well, I think it'd be good if we do this. Bull. You need to talk to someone like Roger, who is on the program, who has been there his whole life. And the truth of the matter is, he's the only one I know. And so ask Roger what he thinks, because I guarantee you he's got possible solutions. And why wouldn't you just listen to him? There, I said it. Roger, thank you for being on the show. And the name of the show is Roger Dykes Just Sayin. So if you were
so
here,
so what you're saying, Michael, is it wouldn't have been the same without.
Absolutely, man. You've been listening to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. If you'd like to get a message to Roger, his Facebook account is listed as Roger Dykes. Become a friend, or you can send your questions and comments to Roger Dykes 51
51@gmail.com. That's ROGERDYKES51@gmail.com. Our podcast reveals a new episode every 3 weeks. Join us next time for our next episode of Roger Dykes Just Sayin'. I'm Michael Shawn. On behalf of Roger Dykes, thanks for listening.